There are moments in life that seem uneventful, until you look back and realize they were the very ones that changed everything. That night began like any other, a quiet evening in the cabin, logs crackling in the fire, snow falling outside. He had asked to stay just a few nights. My son's friend, someone I had seen grow up over the years, and yet the man who now stood in my living room wasn't the boy I once remembered. His voice had deepened. His shoulders had broadened. There was something else, too. Something in the way he looked at me. Not rude, not bold, just aware. I tried not to think too much of it. After all, I had known him since he was a teenager. But as we sat side by side watching the fire, a kind of quiet tension filled the room. Not dangerous, not wrong, just unfamiliar. Like the silence between two notes of a song you didn't expect to love. He leaned back. I poured the tea. Our eyes met, and something in me stilled. I told myself it was just a moment. Just the weather. Just the memory of being touched once long ago. But my body remembered more than I gave it credit for. That was the first moment I realized. He saw me, and I hadn't been seen in a long, long time. If you've ever found yourself in the quiet space between right and almost wrong, if you've ever felt someone's gaze reach deeper than their words, tell me in the comments, would you have turned away or leaned in just a little? Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that unfold slowly and burn all the way through. Because this one is just beginning. He moved in the week before the snowstorm. I told myself it was temporary, just a few nights until the roads cleared. My son's old friend, now in his early 20s, had nowhere else to go. And the cabin, though small, had room. He brought little with him. A duffel bag, a calm voice, and a quiet kind of presence that filled the space more than I expected. At first, we barely crossed paths. He kept to the guest room, helped stack firewood, and rarely spoke unless spoken to. There was a respectful distance between us. One I had always assumed would remain. But one evening that changed. I had just finished washing dishes when I heard him behind me offering to dry. His tone was gentle, almost hesitant. I handed him a towel, smiling politely, and we worked in silence. But somewhere between rinsing the final plate and setting it down, I noticed how close we had become, not in inches, but in energy. His presence was no longer peripheral. It was tuned into me. I caught his eyes lingering for just a second too long, not with arrogance, but with a quiet curiosity that startled me. I turned away quickly, brushing it off. I was older. I was supposed to know better. And yet something inside me shifted. The next morning, I woke to the sound of movement in the kitchen. He was already making coffee. The light through the frosted window made his silhouette glow. Tall, strong, unassuming. He handed me a mug with a small smile. "You didn't have to," I said. "I wanted to," he replied. Simple words, but they stayed with me. Over the next few days, I noticed the subtle ways he kept weaving into my space. He offered to salt the steps. He asked if I needed anything from town. He fixed a loose hinge on the screen door without saying a word. None of it was dramatic. None of it bold. But it all carried something I hadn't felt in years. Care. Awareness. A softness that slowly dissolved the solitude I had wrapped around myself like an old coat. One night, we watched an old film together. Something romantic and slow. The kind of story where the characters don't kiss until the very end. We sat on opposite ends of the couch at first, but over time, the distance shortened. His arm rested on the back cushion behind me. Not touching, not intruding, just there. I felt the warmth of him before I ever felt his hand. I turned my head slightly, and our eyes met, brief, still, and startling. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't even desire. It was the first spark of something neither of us had planned for, but both of us recognized. A few days passed. The snow hadn't melted, and neither had the distance between us. Only now, there wasn't much of it left. It was a Tuesday morning when I slipped on the icy steps out front. It wasn't dramatic, just a sudden jolt, a gasp, and the world tilting sideways. He caught me, his arms wrapped around my waist with a strength that felt both steady and instinctive. For a moment, I froze, not from pain, but from the nearness. My face was pressed lightly against his chest. His breath touched my hair. One of his hands was splayed between my shoulder blades, the other lower, too low to be proper. We both stilled, and then, just as quickly, he released me. "Are you okay?" he asked, eyes wide, voice tight. I nodded, but the moment lingered on my skin, in my chest. Deep behind my ribs, I could still feel where his hands had been, even after they were gone. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the look in his eyes, concern laced with something else. Something unspoken, maybe even unintended, or maybe not. The wind howled outside. My room felt colder than usual, and I wrapped myself in every layer I could find. Still, my mind drifted to him, not the boy I remembered, but the man he had quietly become. In the morning, I found a mug of tea already steeping in the kitchen. A soft note beside it read, "For warmth. In case last night stayed with you." He never signed it, but he didn't need to. That day, the heater in my room began to flicker. The power had weakened with the storm. I didn't say anything until the evening, but he had already noticed. "If it gets worse, don't hesitate," he said, voice low. "You can sleep in the living room. I'll take the chair." "I'll be fine," I replied, but I wasn't sure I meant it. Later that night, while I was brushing my hair in the mirror, I caught a glimpse of myself. Soft waves falling across my bare shoulders, skin pale against the warm glow of the bedside lamp. I studied myself, not like a woman looking for flaws, but like someone trying to remember what it felt like to be wanted. Really wanted. Not out of obligation or habit, but from a place deep in the gut, magnetic, undeniable, slow. And then I heard it. A knock. Quiet. Hesitant. I pulled on my robe and opened the door. He stood there, his voice just above a whisper. "I heard the wind again. Thought you might be cold." I said nothing, just stepped aside. He entered without another word, his eyes never quite meeting mine. For a few long seconds, we just stood there in silence, wrapped in the hush of everything we hadn't said and everything we already knew. He stood there in the doorway, snow melting from his shoulders, eyes unreadable in the low amber light. Neither of us said anything for a moment. The silence was thick, not awkward, not forced, just full. Like breath, held too long. "I can sleep in the chair if you prefer," he offered. I nodded slowly, but my voice caught when I tried to respond. Instead, I motioned to the blanket folded at the end of the bed. He took it, settled into the armchair near the window. The firelight flickered against his face, casting soft gold across the angles of his jaw. I turned off the bedside lamp, but didn't close my eyes. Neither did he. Something in the air had shifted. Not loudly, but unmistakably. It started with a sigh. Mine soft, unsure, barely audible over the wind outside. Then his voice like gravel, smoothed by years of restraint. "You don't have to pretend." I turned toward him. "Pretend what I whispered. That this isn't hard," he said. "For either of us." I sat up slowly, the covers slipping around my waist. The robe I wore loosened at the collar, baring one shoulder to the cold. But I didn't pull it back up. I didn't speak. He stood, walked to the foot of the bed, stopped. "I don't want to cross anything. You haven't opened yourself," he said, voice like quiet thunder. My heart beat louder than the storm. "There's nothing left closed," I breathed. He came closer, carefully, respectfully. Like someone approaching a page already half written, unsure if his touch would ruin the ink or complete the sentence. And when he reached out, it wasn't rushed. His hand grazed mine, then paused, then held. That single contact broke everything I'd held back. My breath caught. My lips parted without words. His thumb brushed the inside of my palm, and I felt it in places I hadn't remembered existed. He sat beside me, our knees barely touching. I could smell cedar on his skin and winter on his coat. He leaned forward, not pressing, not claiming, just waiting. My forehead touched his. His voice was a whisper. "Tell me no, and I'll walk away." But I didn't. Instead, I reached up and rested my fingertips along his jaw. That's when his mouth met mine. It was not a kiss of hunger. It was something deeper, like two worlds merging slowly after spinning too far for too long. His hand came to rest against the small of my back. My breath quickened. I melted forward, and in that moment, the years of loneliness in my chest burned away. When our lips parted, we stayed close, breathing each other in, memorizing the silence that followed. "I never meant for this," I said softly. "I did," he answered without shame. "Not like this, not this soon. But I've seen you, Elena, and I couldn't unsee it. I should have pulled away. I should have reminded him of what we were not lovers, not even supposed to be possibilities. But instead, I reached for his hand again, and this time, I didn't let go. It was the wind that woke me, sharp howling, distant branches snapping, the sound of something falling close, too close. I rushed out of bed, robe drawn tight, just as the lights flickered, and then vanished completely. Darkness swept through the cabin like a wave, then silence, until he appeared. "Elena." His voice came from down the hall. I met him in the living room, where the fire had burned low, and the window groaned under pressure. We both looked toward my room. A heavy tree limb had fallen across the far side of the cabin. The roof had splintered, part of it caved, and snow was beginning to spill inside. The cold hit me all at once, and the fear. He placed his hands on my shoulders, steadying me. "You can't sleep in there tonight," he said gently. "Come with me." He didn't wait for me to answer, just took my hand and led me toward the smaller room near the hearth. It was barely big enough for the two of us, but it was safe. Dry warm. We stood in silence for a long time, both of us aware that something had shifted again, not just between us, but around us. I sat on the edge of the pull-out cot, my knees drawn up, arms hugging my sides. The house creaked under the weight of snow and night. And then it came out. "I haven't let anyone close since I left my marriage," I said, voice hollow. "Even when someone offered, I just couldn't. I forgot how." He didn't speak, just knelt in front of me. "You didn't forget," he said. "You just stopped believing anyone would stay." His words split something in me clean and quiet. Tears welled but didn't fall. "I'm afraid," I whispered. "Of what?" "That if I let go, I won't be able to hold myself together." His fingers found mine again, just like before. Only this time, I didn't resist. "Then don't hold it," he said softly. "I'll catch it." We sat like that for what felt like hours. His forehead pressed to my knees, his breath warming the cold space between us. Then I lifted his face to mine. "I don't need promises. I said I don't need forever." "What do you need?" he asked. "Tonight," I answered, and the quiet that followed was louder than anything I had ever known. He rose slowly, reverently, and sat beside me. The cot shifted beneath our weight. Our arms met, our shoulders, our breath. No words, no rush, just gravity and choice. His lips found my cheek first, then my temple, then finally my mouth, slow, searching, certain. Everything that had built between us, glances, pauses, breathless nights, unfolded all at once in that kiss. But it was never wild, it was worship. His hands stayed gentle, his eyes stayed open, and in the warmth of that narrow room, I finally remembered what it felt like to be known. Not for who I had been, but for who I had become. The room was barely lit. A soft, orange glow pulsed from the fireplace, like the final heartbeat of the storm. Outside, the snow had quieted. Inside, so had we. But something deeper stirred. We didn't rush toward it. We let it come like a tide. Neither of us tried to stop. He traced the back of my hand with his fingertips, memorizing its shape, as though he needed proof I was real. Then he looked at me, not like someone asking permission, but like someone offering sanctuary. I leaned forward, pressing my cheek to his shoulder, breathing him in. There was cedar warmth, something faintly electric. My body softened beside his, and all the locked doors within me began to open one by one quietly. His hand rose to the side of my face, and I closed my eyes as he brushed away a loose strand of hair. No one had touched me like that in years, not to take, not to claim, but to ask wordlessly, "Are you ready?" And he leaned in. Our lips met like a memory, returning, not forceful, not timid, but inevitable. His mouth was warm and steady, his breath threading into mine as though we were learning a new language together. Time dissolved. With each kiss, the layers I had wrapped around myself, the guilt, the years of restraint, the fear of being too much or not enough, they all began to slip away like fabric falling to the floor. His hands were deliberate, reverent, one resting at the curve of my waist, the other skimming up my back. No rush, no destination, just presence. I felt myself yielding, not out of surrender to him, but surrender to myself, finally. He whispered my name like a promise, like a prayer. And then silence again. Heavy, holy, whole. I pulled him close. The warmth of his chest met mine, and for the first time in so long, I let someone hold me without armor. He moved with intention, with patience, like someone painting on silk, tracing a path he already knew, but was still awed to discover. We didn't speak. There was no need for language when skin remembered what the heart had tried to forget. Every sigh was a story, every glance a confession, and when his hands slid beneath the fabric that still clung to me, it wasn't indecent. It was devotion. His touch didn't invade it, answered. He explored me like a room with no windows, just candlelight history, and echoes waiting to be heard. I responded not wildly, but completely, like thawed earth welcoming spring, like pages that had waited too long to be read. And when I opened to him, fully, quietly, beautifully, it wasn't just desire, it was recognition, like two rivers that had run alone for too long, finally finding their confluence. The world outside no longer existed. There was only breath, only hands, only the pulse beneath my ribs that finally said yes. His rhythm matched mine, not just physically, but emotionally. We moved together with the grace of something ancient, something not learned, but remembered. And when he held my face and looked into my eyes as we trembled together at the edge of everything I knew, this was not a mistake. It was a miracle. Quiet, unspoken. Forbidden, but utterly, breathtakingly real. I woke to the faintest blue light brushing across the wooden beams above us. His arm was still around me, not possessive, just there, like a memory that refused to fade. Outside, the snow had softened into mist. The storm was over, but inside me, something else was just beginning. I turned, slightly careful, not to disturb the stillness between us. His breath was slow, calm. One hand rested near mine, our fingers barely touching, yet still connected, as if neither of us was ready to let go. The night replayed in fragments. His voice, his hands, the way he looked at me like I wasn't someone broken by the years, but someone rediscovered by them. I thought I would feel shame or fear, but what I felt was peace. Not the kind that comes from perfection, the kind that comes from being seen. Flaws, age past, and all, and still being held. He stirred eyes, fluttering open the corners of his lips, pulling into the faintest smile. "Hi," he whispered. I smiled too. "Hi." We didn't talk about what happened. Not right away. We didn't have to. The room was full of it, still warm with what we'd shared, still aching with what we didn't dare say out loud. I slipped out of bed and wrapped myself in the cardigan I'd left nearby. He watched me with quiet eyes that asked a question he didn't speak. I walked to the window. The tree limb had been cleared from the yard. The snow was melting in patches. Somewhere spring was coming. Behind me he stood. I felt him before I heard him. He rested a hand on my shoulder. Just one, simple, steady. "You okay?" he asked softly. I nodded. More than okay. And I meant it, because even if nothing came after this, no promises, no explanations, I would remember this moment as the one where I let someone in again. Not carelessly, not recklessly, but fully. Not every connection begins with intention. Sometimes it starts in silence, in a glance too long, in a kindness offered without reason, in a room warmed not by fire, but by presence. What happened between us that night wasn't planned. It wasn't chased. It simply unfolded. I used to believe that love had to be loud to be real, but I've learned that the quietest moments, the ones behind closed doors between two people who never meant to fall, can be the ones that change us forever. We crossed a line, but maybe it was never a line to begin with. Maybe it was a bridge, built slowly from shared pain, mutual care, and the quiet ache of being seen. If you're listening to this right now, wondering if it's too late to feel again, let me tell you, it's not. Love doesn't always knock politely. Sometimes it slips in like a breath in winter, uninvited, undeniable. Let it in, even if it's not forever, even if it leaves behind questions. Because sometimes, just for one night to be chosen to be held is enough to remind you you're still alive. Tell me in the comments, have you ever been seen in a way that shook you? I'd love to hear your story. You're not alone here. If this story touched you, like, subscribe, and turn on the bell for more slow burn confessions from the edge of love and longing. This is Scarlett's Affair Stories, where every story whispers what the heart dares not say out loud.